I were to ask you which is worse, what would you say? A recession or higher than normal inflation? Well, central bankers would say inflation is good for growth and recession is bad for business. But you may be surprised to learn that whilst a recession sounds a whole lot scarier, it's actually inflation that is way more dangerous and the greater of two evils. And it's much more dangerous than you're being told. So in this video, I'll be breaking down why higher than normal inflation is worse than a recession and exactly what happened the last time this kind of inflation happened. And stick around, of course, until the end of the video where I will be sharing the hidden cost of inflation over the long term, including the retirement lie that you've been told. It's gonna be a juicy one, so strap in. So first, we were told higher inflation wasn't going to happen. Then we were told inflation's transitory. Remember that? What a line. Then we were told, well, the Fed's going to get inflation under control real fast, okay? Right now, inflation has been higher than its 2% benchmark target in the US for over 3 years. And that eventually takes a toll on, well, everything. Primarily the economy and basically everyone in it. Higher than normal inflation can eventually turn into stagflation. It's what the central bankers fear the most. And the USA is getting closer and closer to a dangerous stagflation situation. So in simple terms, stagflation is a prolonged period of higher than normal inflation combined with slow growth and high unemployment. Stagflation is basically everything that comes with a recession, but with the added stress of a higher cost of living situation as well. So you're going to have no job, yet pay more for the goods and services that you need. Sounds like a good time. This is what makes it so damn cruel for everyday people. Oh, the bankers, they don't care. The Fed, they don't care. And of course, it's all something that Fed President Neil Kashkari just confessed to only recently. He told the Financial Times that I don't understand how can inflation be worse than a recession? In a recession, you lose your job. Inflation is just paying higher prices, but you still have a job. Nice one, Neil. Either Mr. Kashkari here is out of touch or he's just not being honest, but his tone-deaf comments show that either way, no one is coming to save you. Nope. Recessions impact people directly, but usually they last for just a few quarters, whereas high inflation impacts everyone directly, especially the lower classes, whilst also eating into the middle class because they can't borrow as easily. There's income problems, all these kinds of things. So with inflation, everyone gets a pay cut. With a recession, only some people get a pay cut. Higher inflation destroys people purchasing power at a much faster rate, which has a significantly powerful compounding effect over time. So recessions may sound really scary, and they kind of are, especially bad ones. But stagflation is the slow, silent recession, which is even more dangerous. Now, the US has so far been able to avoid stagflation, and it's been able to do so for so long because the economy has been growing at a rate that really no one thought was possible, especially given everything that's been thrown at it. I mean, the US economy, you got to give it to it, man. It is resilient. We've had slowing down supply chains. We've had high inflation. We've had high interest rates. We've had job layoffs, man. Tech sector got slaughtered. But the US economy is now starting to show signs that it is slowing down. The US economy grew by an annualized rate of only 1.3% in Q1 of this year compared to 3.4% in Q4 of last year. Still growing, just slower. The unemployment rate has also been ticking up and now has risen to 4%. So if the US is heading towards stagflation, then what happens next? Well, we can actually look back in history because it's happened before. Let's look back to when that last happened. But before I discuss that and look at just how catastrophic that was, let me interrupt the flow real quick to let you know about the best damn newsletter in the cryptocurrency business. It happens to be my newsletter, and it's called the Wealth Mastery Report. Every single week, we bring you the latest, the greatest, the hottest, the freshest, the best smelling insights on the cryptocurrency market. We're talking about airdrops, meme coins, altcoins, deep dives, NFTs, technical analysis, charts, and the news, of course, as a newsletter after all, much, much more. You can join our over 130,000 plus weekly readers and sign up for free using the link down below in the description on YouTube or the pinned comment over on X. Now back to the regular scheduled programming. So let's talk about what happened to the USA in the 1970s. And no, I'm not talking about coming off the gold standard. Oh, that's a big story. That's another video in itself, okay, guys? All of that and other factors like oil supply shocks, budget deficits, and low interest rates all helped to stir up a big, fat, stinking serving of stagflation. And it sounds eerily similar to today's economy. The average inflation rate for the 1970s as a whole was 6.8%. Well, that's pretty bad, man. That's crushing. So let's explore how the US overcame it back then. See, Fed chair at the time, Paul Volcker, was only able to get inflation under control through engineering 2 recessions. Cool. That doesn't sound like fun, does it? He famously implemented what's now known as the Volcker shock, raising interest rates from 10% in 1979 to a peak of 19% in 1981. What? First recession happened from January to July 1980, where the economy declined by 2.2%, but that wasn't enough to bring inflation down, believe it or not. By Q4 of 1980, inflation was up to 11.1%. So by 1981, the USA was in the middle of its second stint of double-digit inflation in the space of less than a decade, crushing. The country was in a full-blown crisis. Gas prices, interest rates skyrocket, everything was going up like nuts, and the job market was on its frickin' knees with unemployment over 7%. The U.S. officially entered a recession again in Q3 of 1981 as the effects of high interest rates kicked in. Around 12 months later, unemployment grew from 7% to almost 10%, crushing stuff here. And inflation was still 5% in 1982. Now, one thing that doesn't change is that once inflation gets out of control, it's pretty hard to get it back under control. So the Fed in 2024 is doing not such a bad job. But anyway, eventually it did get back under control. And at the end of the 1980s, the inflation beast had been tamed and the economy was booming once again. But it took a long time. It was a painful decade for the average American. So our buddy, Mr. Cash Carry, where do they get these names? It's like a Bond villain. Anyway, Cash Carry clearly isn't paying attention. Higher inflation can lead to recession-like conditions. But after the Volcker shock, history has proved that once inflation becomes super stubborn, it can often take an actual recession, or in that case, 2, to be able to get rid of it. Meaning everyone has to suffer again and again and again. Fed Chair Jerome Powell doesn't think the U.S. is heading towards stagflation today, but they're wrong on everything. They didn't think inflation was going to happen. They didn't think stagflation was going to happen. They don't think a recession is going to happen. Look, comparing the economy right now with that of the 1970s, Jerome Powell said, I don't see the stag or the inflation. I guess we'll see about that. I don't trust the Fed as far as I can throw them. They're pretty damn big. But even if the U.S. manages to avoid stagflation altogether, the long-term effects from what's already happened is, of course, what's even more dangerous. So let's talk about the cumulative damage that inflation actually does to your wealth. Yes, you listening, over the long term. If the U.S. ever sees 2% inflation again, which they're on the course to getting that, okay? But anyway, the Federal Reserve is going to declare that the job is done. But what they won't tell you is that even 2% inflation steals 50% of your wealth every 20 years. 50% of your wealth every 20 years. I had to repeat it. It's that crazy. And of course, we know the official inflation rates are manipulated anyway. According to former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, I know, but still. Anyway, if CPI today, the consumer price index, was measured in the same way that it was before it changed in 1983, then U.S. inflation in 2022 would have peaked at 18%. Remember, they just changed numbers when it's not working for them, okay? Not the official 9% that we got, by the way. Now, add on top of that, the compounding effects of the higher inflation that we've had and we are still living through today. Now, according to Trueflation, since January 2020, Americans have been hit with 25% compounded inflation. That's crazy, man. That is 10 years worth of normal currency devaluation in just 4 years. That is called a bitch slap from the Fed is what that is. Now, what makes it more dangerous is that when inflation is at higher than normal levels, wages cannot keep up. Makes it harder for regular people. Between 2021 and 2023, inflation was rising faster than wages, meaning workers were hit twice as hard. It's harder to make the ends meet and to pay the bills and put clothes on your kids and all that kind of stuff, man. If your salary isn't increasing each year by more than the inflation rate, then you're getting a pay cut. It's just that simple. While still having to pay more for the things that you need. Because you don't stop needing things, do you? Can you see the subtle yet shocking domino effect that's spiraling out of control right now? Inflation over time means that things cost more. Your salary is slightly increasing, but generally not enough. And you're left wondering, why is there less and less to save at the end of every month? Why is it getting harder and harder to live and survive? Then there's the retirement lie. They said, look, just work a job for 50 years, save for your retirement, be a good boy or girl, and you'll have 10 to 20 years of magical retirement bliss. But a new retirement study from Schroders shows that only 4%, I have to repeat these numbers because they're so insane, of current retirees are living the dream. 44% are comfortable, 34% are okay, 15% are struggling, and 4% are living the nightmare. They'll be found out back, and when they're 89 with a heart attack, out back the Walmart when they went for a break on the greeter job and didn't come back. It's dark, man. It's dark, okay? This financial system was not built for you, and you're not getting the dream that they were promised, okay? With state retirement funds quickly running out of cash, it's almost certain that future retirees can expect a shortfall in their savings. And that's because money that's easy to make makes life harder. And that's why we buy Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. You know I was going to bring it back to Bitcoin, didn't you? Of course you did. Anyway, let me know where inflation is impacting you most right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.